And that book is Demon Days X-Men #1 from Peach Momoko.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we initially reviewed the preview of this book last week or 2 weeks ago, and we were really impressed with it. We really enjoyed the art style, we enjoyed the writing, we enjoyed the story, and this book continues that. Obviously, what I find interesting is the preview we got in King in Black 4 for this book was either something that's going to happen later on in the issues, or it was like a story that may have gotten cut, because that story was not in this book.
No, it said it was a prelude to this.
I gotcha. Well, I enjoyed that. So
Yes.
I guess so. We'll cut it down to here. So we get a village. Or before that, we even get a breakdown of the relationship between humans and demons or Onis. Onis live in the mountains, and they, if you leave them be, if you leave their space be, they'll leave you alone. They're peaceful beings. But when you start encroaching on them and taking over their lands and killing their resources, they're going to come into your village and pillage. And so what I really like about this book is Peach Momoko blends traditional Japanese traditions and like stories into characters that we know through the Marvel Universe. Obviously, Psylocke. We get, I believe, Danny Moonstar. We get Jubilee. We get the Hulk. We get Venom. And am I missing any other ones? I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh no, Logan. Shit.
Oh yes, her wolf.
Freaking Logan. So, if you haven't read the prelude, Logan is a actual wolf in this book, which is really cool. But anyway, so what happens is we get the whole idea of the Onis coming into the villages and pillaging because humans are desecrating their mountain and desecrating their forests. And so Danny Moonstar, who again in this book, I don't think, I'm almost certain nobody has mutant powers. It's more of like these are these characters if they were in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
So our Danny Moonstar character is kind of like this rebellious youth who is just fed up with the Onis, like, ransacking their village. So she's gonna take it to him. She's not gonna put up with it anymore. And so she chases one that that was like attacking the village. Well, wasn't attacking the village. He was eating food. He was eating their food, and she got all pissed off with it. And she starts chasing it, and it runs away. And when she's coming back to the village, Psylocke, who is kind of like a Ronin character, she's just kind of a wandering swordsman, overhears Moonstar basically saying like, "Hey, like, I hate these freaking Onis," and she's like, "Oh, that's something I can get into. I'm kind of like a sellsword, so hire me and I'll take care of your problem." And so she finds out that the problem is like the Oni is eating their crops, eating their food, and so Sai, being the way she is, she knows how to deal with demons, and basically the way to do it is not to be violent, to talk to the Oni, to basically tell it like, I will promise that I'll let the humans not mess with your forest. In turn, you don't steal their crops, right? So she tracks it down, and before she can track it down, 2 other villagers show up, and they're like, "Hey, somebody just got eaten by a giant demon." And they're like, "What?" So they go to a shrine, and this is where it gets crazy. So there is a giant, what looks like Venom, inside this temple, and what we find out is Venom has, this is the one thing that is very Marvel, in the sense that the Venom has found a new host, and the host is the Oichi, which is a giant serpent demon. And so it is consumed, or it is connected with this giant serpent. And so it's feeding off of villagers, like literally eating villagers. Like there's a scene where someone's like, "Run away," and the Venom Oichi just like completely devours a human being, one of the villagers.
Yeah, he completely splats on the stairs outside the palace.
That was my oh shit for this book. I was like, oh, that's that sucks. So there's basically two problems in this book. You've got the Oni, who is messing with the villagers, and then you have this Venom Oichi, who is also killing villagers. The difference is that the Oni is just trying to survive. The Venom Oichi is just a piece of shit. So there's two different problems. So Sai is in charge of getting control of the Oni, whereas Moonstar goes and sees like I forget what they're called. It's basically a shaman, or it's not a shaman. I forget what she puts it in the book.
Yeah.
The terminology.
A Jushi,
which is like a witch or a wizard, and so the witch or wizard is portrayed by Jubilee, and so she's had like a remedy to subdue Oichi, but it's very temporary. And so basically she's been selling them like firecrackers, which I think is kind of funny because that's Jubilee's mutant power. So her thing is to make firecrackers and scare the Venom symbiote off of the serpent. So Sai does her thing. She talks to or she doesn't talk. She actually fights the Oni, which is actually called, it's basically the Hulk. It's their version of the Hulk.
It's Red Hulk too.
Red Hulk, yeah. And she subdues him and says, listen, you help us. I'll make sure that the humans no longer mess with you and mess with your land, and vice versa. You do the same. And he's like, okay, I'm trusting you. And so you have this coalition of Moonstar, Psylocke, Red Hulk, and Jubilee taking on this demon, this Oichi Venom. And it's a pretty intense fight scene. Like they're going back and forth. They're throwing the firecrackers. Sai's dodging, and I believe the firecrackers are what like essentially get it to start getting off of the snake.
Yeah.
And then I think it's like Logan and Moonstar kind of just everybody attacks it at once essentially.
Mm-hmm. Well, it acts just like a normal symbiote, right? So loud noises and fire are sort of its weakness. So as they're going off, it's literally splattering off of this snake.
Right. And so they just kind of go at it for a while to the point where they subdue it. And the symbiote eventually is able to get off the snake. And Oichi, essentially, once it gets off of him, he disappears. And so they save the day. And, everybody is the Oni is happy. The villagers are happy. Logan ends up getting hurt in the middle of it, but he heals quickly. I thought that was kind of a nice little odd to Wolverine and his healing factors, but he does get scratched in the eye, so he's kind of got like a war wound. And then Sai continues her journey, and she like helps the villagers, and she leaves. And then the book ends with basically a girl reading this story, like a manga essentially. Mm-hmm. And you're like, whoa. So like, she was reading like either a story or a piece of history, and then she's told to go to bed. Like she's like living in a house with like a carekeeper, and the caretaker is, it looks like it's Black Widow.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's sick. So like that's where the story ends, but we also see Logan back at the old shrine where the story took place, and he's kind of like keeping a watchful eye. And then it cuts, and then we get a really cool detailed page of like what each character kind of represents within traditional Japanese folklore, which I thought was really neat. I thought it was a nice like ode to like, hey, like you may not know what these things are, but if you'd like to know what these things really represent in Japan, we're gonna tell you. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was really neat, because like the Oichi character, I've known that character through other mediums, like through video games. So it was kind of neat to like read up even more on that, which I thought was cool. And then like the Oni, there's a red and blue Oni. They're pretty predominant in other like animes, like they're in Dragon Ball, and like they're like goofy characters. But I like the fact that they had like that folklore tale about how between the red and the blue, and how the red was being mistreated, and so the blue Oni tried to he cooked up a plan to make sure that he was well taken care of, and then the blue Oni ended up dying to get the other one to feel better. So that was kind of crazy, but just nice with that. And then we get a preview to the next Demon Days book, which is going to follow the girl that we were introduced in the end of this issue, and then we got Black Widow there. It's not coming out until June, and I'm really sad about that. Like, I'm going to pick it up, but man, that's a long time. But
well,
I think
when you've got someone writing it, drawing it, and coloring it, you know, that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, she's putting the attention to detail in this book is phenomenal. And if you skipped out on this book on Wednesday, if they still have copies at your local comic book shop, I highly recommend picking this up, because it's a really good book, and like the cover is really good. I think Peach blew it out of the water for sure.
Yeah, I would say, you know, especially if you're watching this and you are, you know, going right away saying, "Oh, it's Peach. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to read it." I honestly think that both the art and the story here are good enough to stand on their own. So if like the story of like a Ronin and a, you know, almost like a Seventh Samurai sort of thing, if that really appeals to you, but the art doesn't, I would say still read this anyway, because the story is fantastic. But I would also say if the story doesn't sound like that's really your cup of tea, but you like this more Japanese-inspired manga-style art, which I'm not into traditionally. I've never read manga personally, but this book was like a breath of fresh air, I think, in my weekly pull list. You know,
yeah,
like it was, you know, a little bit of a different culture, a little bit of a different style than I'm used to, and I really enjoyed it.
I think it, like you're saying, a breath of fresh air. Like, and I'm not saying we're bogged down in King and Black tie-ins, but it kind of, I think it definitely was like, if you're trying to, like, just like you said, just try to get into something new, this is definitely it. And Peach even said, like, I think she said on Twitter, you know, everybody that loves Sai, like, she'll be back, but don't be what was the word? Just don't be too not necessarily attached, but she won't be in the next book. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be jumping around, but either way, like, I think I don't know how many parts this is. I don't know if it's 4 or 6. But when there's a collected, whatever the collected is, which I'm assuming will be like a manga style format, I'm definitely picking this up. Like,
that would be pretty cool. A different format, kind of like what they did with Strange Academy.
Yeah, you know, and I think that would be. I mean, I'll put that on my shelf immediately when FOC comes out for that. Doing it. Probably won't come out until next year, but whatever.
at this pace, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, well done, Peach. Keep it up. This is amazing. And you know, I know we're starting the show, but this is my pick of the week. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right at the beginning.
This is my pick of the week, and we've got a new sound alert for the pick of the week. So I'm going to say again, this is my pick of the week. That's the pick of the week gong.
I can't hear it, but
I know you can't, but you'll hear it when you watch it. When you watch it back, you'll hear it. Hey, what up, Maddie? Thanks for joining us, man. I'm really happy you're here.